Unlike other controversies where human factors play a big part in the building of tensions, the controversial aspect of the Strait of Malacca mainly arises from its geography and more specifically its geological structure. Running between Malaysia and Indonesia, it links the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. For this reason, the strait is crucially important for the international maritime trade. However, since the focus of global economics shifted toward Asia in the last decades, its narrowness and shallowness has made the strait somewhat of a choke point for traffic. The Strait of Malacca is one of the most important shipping waterways in the world from both an economic and a strategic perspective. There are more than 200 vessels passing through daily, which adds to more than 70,000 ships annually. These ships carry 80% of the oil transported to Northeast Asia, as well as one-third of the world's trading goods, such as Chinese manufactured goods, Indonesian coffee, etc. Throughout the video, we will seek to understand the mechanisms at play within the Strait of Malacca. To do so, we will be studying the strait at 3 different scales. First, we'll take a look at the local level and see what complications unravel. Then we will see what the role of the strait plays within the regional dynamics, and finally study the international implications of the strait. The Strait of Malacca is located right above the equator in Southeast Asia and is one of the most important maritime passes of the region and even of the world. The stretch of water flows between the Malay Peninsula and the Indonesian island of Sumatra, connecting the Indian Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, and is surrounded by 4 sovereign nations: Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore. The strait is 850 kilometers long, and its width roughly fluctuates between 50 and 390 kilometers. The depth of the strait is also uneven, as it can go as deep as 200 meters to some 14.9 meters shallow in certain of the shipping canals. The southernmost part of the strait is also sprinkled with islands, making navigation difficult as well as dangerous, since it is a haven for pirates. The climate is not a significant issue. It is hot and humid, and is characterized by the northeast monsoon during the winter and the southwest monsoon during the summer. A few natural hazards regarding the strait are worth noting, the first being storms, the second tsunamis, as the area is a geothermal hotspot. The borders between the nations controlling the strait have been fixed and respected since 1971. However, they are amongst the most porous borders in the world, since many illegal merchandise ships pass through them daily. Piracy has been a looming issue for the Strait of Malacca for ages. As early as the 1820s, the controlling powers of the region, namely the British and Dutch empires, had to come to an agreement to crack down on piracy. Today, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore still struggle against this bane. Even though the 3 basin countries signed bilateral agreements to coordinate missions and increase the number of common patrols in 1992, the region still accounted for 40% of the world's piracy in 2004. Today, the total numbers have declined as the Malacca Strait's patrol has become more effective at its job. The strait is a major shipping lane for both India and China. The booming economies of both of these countries have made the strait heavily used for global trade, linking Europe to Eastern Asia. Piracy in Malacca Straits takes many forms: opportunistic attacks against anchored ships, large-scale and sophisticated attacks, hijacking, oil theft. Attacks have become more violent over the years since firearms have been more often used. Countries that are using the strait, ship owners and merchants, are pushing for better security by the coastal countries to curb piracy in the region. However, the cooperation between Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand is not easy, since they do not agree on the way they should protect the strait. Moreover, the protection of the strait interferes with the sensitive matter of sovereignty in national waters. The Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Hsien Loong, wants international support in the struggle against piracy and is therefore in favor of expanding the cooperation to other countries, whereas Malaysia and Indonesia are against foreign intervention. Moreover, Indonesia is less involved than the other countries in the efforts to fight piracy, since the country is much poorer than its neighbors. Nevertheless, since 2004, Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia have increased trilateral cooperation. Each state's armed forces patrols within its own waters, avoiding sovereignty issues. The surveillance program Eyes in the Skies, which began in 2005, entailed combined air and marine patrols. On the 21st of April 2011, the chief of the Malaysian Defense Forces said that the Strait of Malacca achieved a close to zero incident in the preceding year, due to the collaboration between Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Thailand. We shall now see what role the Strait of Malacca plays within the regional dynamics. In order to accommodate for the 70,000 plus ships navigating through the strait every year, a dense network of ports has developed over time. There are over 40 officially recognized ports all along the strait, and hundreds if we consider the smaller and less significant ones. These numbers show the density of the network, but these ports are also significant on the global scale. In fact, 3 of the top 20 ports in volume of the world are located in the Strait of Malacca. 2 of them are in Malaysia. Port Klang is number 12, and Port of Tanjung Pelapas is number 17. And last but not least, the Port of Singapore is the second largest port in the world. Let's take a closer look at the latter. Since Singapore's full independence in 1965, it has had to compete with other ports in the region to attract shipping and trade to it. By the 1980s, maritime trading activity had ceased in the vicinity of the Singapore River, except in the form of passenger transport, as other terminals and harbors overtook this role. Keppel Harbor is now home to 3 container terminals. In the 1990s, the port became more well-known and overtook Yokohama and eventually became the busiest port in terms of shipping by ton. The success of the strait is no means a guarantee of a good relationship between neighboring countries. In fact, it is the foreground of the rivalry between Indonesia and Malaysia. Despite their numerous common points, the two countries have tense relations. Malaysia complains about the flow of illegal migrant workers from Indonesia. Indeed, Indonesian job seekers consider Malaysia as an attractive destination for employment to improve their economic status. Moreover, since the Malay independence, both countries have developed very different social, economic, and political models. The unequal pace of the democratization in the two countries over the last decades is another factor of their poor relations. On the one hand, Indonesia is a republic. On the other, Malaysia is a federal constitutional elective monarchy with dubious democratic practices. However, the tensions between the basin countries will not turn the strait into a war zone, as they are essential to one another's economies. For example, this interconnectedness is apparent since Malaysia's first importing country is Singapore, and Singapore is Indonesia's second supplier of goods. The countries increasingly link their economies over time. For instance, the Indonesia island of Batam has important ties with Singapore's manufacturing, finance, education, and tourism industries in order to become an important touristic destination of the region. In return, Batam can supply Singapore, which has limited land and a big population, with fresh produce. As stated earlier, the Strait of Malacca has been and is one of the most important trade routes in the world. It plays a crucial role in global economics. The strait has been at the center of trades with Asia since ancient times. That being said, the opening of the Suez Canal in 1869 propulsed the strait to the world stage. The new canal allowed a direct link between Indian and Pacific Oceans and reduced by a third the journey that the boats had to take. The Malacca Strait was paramount in the development and the growth of the Asian continent. More than a quarter of oil transported by sea passes through this strait, making it only second to the Strait of Hormuz in volume of oil transported. China and Japan are the most dependent on the strait because of the amount of oil necessary to satisfy the needs of their economies. Over 80% of China's and around 60% of Japan's total oil imports currently pass through the strait. It has become a bottleneck. China is already looking for other solutions by building pipelines to transport oil and gas to lower the congestion of the Malacca Strait. In 2013, the Myanmar-China gas pipeline was completed. Furthermore, Thailand joined the canal mania by proposing to build the Krak Canal, but Thailand Prime Minister insisted that the construction of the canal is not a priority for a moment, as the cost is really high and the positives may not outweigh the negatives. The user states, concerned with the safety of their ships and of their loadings, want to deploy their military in the strait. Because of its high dependence on the strait and of its ambition in South China Sea, the Malacca Strait is a strategic passage for China. The country has built military bases in the Andaman Sea, has military infrastructure in the Coco Islands, on the Zadetiki Island, and also in Siwit and Mergui. Therefore, China has military forces on both sides of the Malacca Strait. Hence, the Chinese military fleets are able to block the use of the whole maritime passage. The United States are very interested in the strait because it allows their troops to relocate quickly. After the September 11 attacks, the U.S. accelerated their militarization of the Indian Ocean and increased their surveillance on the Malacca Strait. The country also cooperates with India, which is also interested in having more control on the ocean that bears its own name, and more specifically, the Malacca Strait. India wants to secure its supplies and is concerned with the Chinese military presence in the region. The international importance of the strait has made international cooperation almost inevitable. Conversely, such intervention is also unacceptable by the littoral states, since the strait mostly encloses their national seas. On the one hand, the littoral states want to be responsible for security within their own jurisdictions. On the other hand, other states, especially the major powers, do not want to take any chance by leaving their vital interest to the littoral states' discretion. Thus, in order to alter the situation into a positive-sum game, the cooperation among all stakeholders is crucial. Undeniably, there is already some international cooperation and collaborative initiatives in which security in the strait is the main objective. At the regional scale, the Regional Cooperation Agreement on Combating Piracy and Armed Robbery Against Ships in Asia, the RECAAP, was concluded in 2004 and created a mechanism for piracy-related information exchange and coordination. Nevertheless, these partnerships are politically sensitive and their achievements are constrained by their initiators. If one of the littoral states is unsupportive, cooperation is likely to go nowhere. At an international scale, the rise of international terrorism encouraged the creation of a cooperative mechanism in 2007. It provides a framework for which littoral states and users of the Strait of Malacca may promote cooperation. However, the strait needs cooperation and collaborative initiative arising from the ASEAN and the major standing bodies of the region in order to keep the situation in the local and the regional dynamic.